Lidder. An exciting first day to this tournament, exciting tournament to be back on here. What has been your take already? Like, I'm jumping straight into because I'm just excited with how different this format is. What is your take? You've seen a little bit of the action so far. Hype it up for me.
Water. I feel like if I want to summarize everything in a single word, it's gotta be water. We've seen a lot of that, partly because a lot of these maps end up being hybrid or semi-hybrid. Like you see Holy Island, it's categorized as a water map. It's somewhat hybrid. Some people consider it a water map. Some people consider it a hybrid. But then again, you have maps that do feature a lot of naval engagements in other categories as well. Talking about Moving Out, for instance, a map that we might see in this series, or even Kawasan, which is kind of listed as a hybrid, or a hybrid map, but it's probably closer to a land map. So I feel like KP, one of the things that we've seen a lot of this weekend so far, as well as in the qualifiers, is a lot of naval engagements.
We have, yeah. It's interesting. I think the argument was made is, if it's water, it's something that you can't really ignore, whereas a hybrid is something you can kind of maybe neglect it to a certain degree. And I think we have seen that, for example, Kawasan. But for those just tuning in and like, oh, what the hell was this map draft? Looks a little bit different. This map draft brought to you by Surfshark is the way Master Realms is going to function. We have 5 categories. Within those categories, there are 3 map choices, and players will choose from them. So you go through the categories, you'll label them, and I believe it's the higher seed chooses the category, and then the lower seed chooses the map. Within those, you can already see some fan favorites from the past, as well as some blasts from the past, and a few new ones as well. I noticed a few people already probably eyes popping out their skulls at King of the Hill making a return. Some of them still getting PTSD about an English All Grand Finals on that map. On the other hand, we have got brand spanking new maps in the Chaos realm. My favorite realm of all, Lidder. Right? Honestly, I don't know if you've seen many of the maps on here so far. Absolutely phenomenal. I think Socotra over-delivered what people expected. Moving Out is proving to be quite spicy. And Floodplain, I don't know, man. I've been looking for more maps where Navy isn't just about fishing.
Well, I mean, we have a couple of these hybrid maps, specifically Floodplain, where you have a lot of this hybrid terrain where both ships and land units can pass, but you don't have any fishing opportunities. But yeah, as you kind of highlighted, most of these maps that do feature water do have quite a lot of fishing involved. Although some of these thumbnails might be a little misleading. Talking about coastal cliffs, for instance, you do have quite a lot of water in there, but it's separated by a mountain range, so you will never get there. It's basically a smaller version of Arabia. But we already have our map picks here, KP, in the Surfshark map draft. And we will be rocking with some old classics as well as some brand new maps. Talk about Dry Arabia and Hill and Dale as the old school competitive maps. And of course, we do have Moving Out as well, which is apparently one of the more beloved Chaos maps here.
Yeah, I think people come to engage with it. At first, there's few expectations on certain civs to be dominant. I remember I dissected this on my stream. I thought there was a lot more viable civs than was originally apparent. I still think China and Juji will be top because, for example, the fact you can tax A, right? You don't have to leave your starting island to tech up, which is kind of insane. Things like Marlians come to mind, though, that people wouldn't have thought of before. Because if you remember when Marlians first came out, Lidicore, there's this whole cheesy idea around garrisoning your villages in a transport ship. And I hear somewhere out of nowhere, they just equip themselves with javelins they hurl at an unbelievable rate. That is someone that's going to be viable on that map. I've even seen a few people experiment with that. Order the Dragon is starting to make a resurgence. I think Recon was one of the biggest people to stick the lens on that on Holy Island, actually. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that come out. In fact, LucifroN's already got that in his draft. Biggest notation going into this tournament, I think it's going to be baffling by the end of this tournament. I'm expecting the most picked and banned civs outside of the obvious ones such as Rus and China. It's going to be Juji. Juji is creme de la creme. It fits so many different categories. It can fit into the Chaos realm quite well. It can fit into the Water realm quite well. Even the Hybrid realm isn't unheard of.
Looking at those civilization picks here, KP, Jushi was banned away from LucifroN, but CSO actually made it one of his earliest picks. So, as you kind of highlighted, the versatility of that civilization could come into play with how this map pool is looking like. But we're going to open with a fairly traditional matchup here on Dry Arabia. It is going to be the Delhi versus Jeanne d'Arc. And KP, this is a matchup that has never happened before in competitive AOE IV. Not the civilizations, but the players. LucifroN and CSO have never played a competitive set against each other.
That was interesting. I was going to fact check. I was like, I don't know. I've been watching Jeanne have a field day up against Delhi's, but no, you're right. CSO versus LucifroN, definitely a new occurrence. By the way, I love the fact that we've just got Chinese players repping now, right? Like first LuMT shines through at the end of the year. Now his teammate CsOH starts to show up. Interesting detail between those two. When you come to this tournament, a lot of people would pit LuMT to finish higher than CsO. But when those two clash, CsO is the one with a positive win rate. So playstyles matter a lot. This guy could end up being Louis' kryptonite. The question mark is whether he can deal with the fire that someone like the Spaniard LucifroN puts out, because this is a guy that thrives on raiding, aggro potential. And I think CsO, where he's found success against Louis MT, he's very good at that raiding element as well. We know Louis is a late game master, but I find usually where CsO looks good, not only is he able to anticipate that late game, but usually cuts it off before it reaches its prime.
I feel like the other thing that we need to highlight here is that this tournament, when you look at the overall map pool and the potential to pick some of these very unconventional maps, it is something that's playing into the hands of many underdogs. So I feel like for players like CsO, players like Louis MT, who often feature a very different playstyle from the classical elite of AOE IV, for them, this map pool is something that could help them upset some of these bigger names and potentially end up finishing the tournament with a really good performance here, KP.
Yeah, and you know what? We've got so many games that we're going to be going across today. Just before we hop in this one, it's really important to let people know what's coming. Obviously, we're opening here with LucifroN versus CsO. We're also going to have Puppy Paw versus Recon following this up, Vortex versus Anatan, and then finally we finish off with Wham versus Baltoon. So if you were hoping to catch one of those sets and wondering where to go, this is the place to be. Just park yourself in the seat, get your popcorn ready, crank out a few energy drinks, because we're going to be here for the long haul. Best of fives all the way. And you know what? I think a few of these could even go the 5-game distance.
I mean, we've seen some sets go all the way to the distance yesterday, and some of them have been very, very spectacular. But here we're looking at Group C and Group D, the opening day for these two groups in the GSL group stage. And we only have 10 seconds left to go here, KP. So we're going to be kicking off this best of 5 between LucifroN and CsO with a Dry Arabia matchup between the Delhi and Jeanne d'Arc.
Let's get to it. An interesting matchup, one that we have not been seeing for a while, because for a long time, actually, it's just been kind of accepted that Jeanne thrives in this environment. We'll have to see if CsO can do that. A player who teams and regularly scrims with who I'd say is the best Jeanne player in the game right now, on Jeanne d'Arc, and LucifroN on the other side, on the stable and strong Delhi. It's an interesting matchup. I'm wondering what LucifroN's thought process was coming into this, knowing that Jeanne was in the picks as an option. You know, Delhi have not had a fun time up against this Civ leader. All it takes is one sniffle, one misfight, and all of a sudden you're dealing with a level 3 Jeanne that can insta-end the game.
This is an interesting matchup, KP, because, you know, back before the new DLC came out, well, it's not new anymore, I guess, but back before the big DLC came out for AOE IV, French versus Delhi were one of the most common matchups on maps like Dry Arabia. And now we see a new evolution to that. Jeanne d'Arc, kind of your French variant, still facing off against Delhi. I think one of the big differences here, though, is that you do have Jeanne from the very beginning of the game, which allows CsO with Jeanne d'Arc to contest the map early on. And that's something that's a little bit more difficult to do when you only have Knights playing as the French, especially now that the Delhi have Ghazi Raiders, which are really good solutions to the Knights problem early on.
Yeah, it's also the fact that Delhi are willing to trade out, right? Like, that's the thing that makes them so good, is they're very militarily efficient, they have great gathering rates, they value playing out to the map, and they're willing to pretty much fight anyone. But Jeanne is that kind of X factor. Whenever you fight her, there's an extra trade-off. It's not just, hey, I spent this much resource, you spent that much resource. It's, oh, nice, now you get a tax rebate in the form of XP for your hero unit. And that's always been the downfall of Delhi. Is like, I think recently a few players have been trying to experiment with the idea of just going fast castle against Jeanne to get away from this issue, because trying to play long feudal almost feels like a death sentence unless you can hit that perfect line and reach up to 60, 70 archers, so you're at a point where you can insta-snipe Jeanne.
And Lucy opening with a Tower of Victory over here, so the more militaristic approach is taken. Whereas on the other side, we do have a School of Cavalry coming in. It's actually being built by not just Jeanne, but an extra villager here. But KP, just looking at the maps here real quick while we still have time before all the feudal age combat begins, this is not a generous map generation here for CsO. He does have that front gold mine very exposed, and the backup gold mines are also kind of out in the middle of nowhere. In general, the front of his base is wide open. Compare that to LucifroN's map spawn, a very well defendable base for him to start with.
He has some problems himself, though. Look at his berry situation. All foods are forward-facing except that one deer. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? One side has safe gold, the other has exposed. It's interesting as well because, like, Delhi don't really care about the gold, they care about the berries. It's kind of like, to a certain degree, you think maybe they trade some of these elements if they could. But I think if CSO leans into that right side and walls it off early, he could have a very safe location. Like, one thing I've noticed time and time again when people play this matchup, and I think it's an overconfidence maneuver, is Zhone up against Delhi, they won't wall in their economy, even when it's so freely and easily doable, like that south side corner.
Yeah, that's something that's very common in pro games. Players just deciding not to wall, and oftentimes they do get punished for it. Well, we're going to have to see how that plays out, KP. But yeah, I agree with you. I think berries and in general food being exposed for LucifroN could be a concern. So funnily enough, if the two players switch sides, both of them would be very happy with their map generation.
Yeah, especially like imagine if you're LucifroN, you get the triple berry spawn like that with the deer.
Yep.
Like that's an insane amount of food, right? And the thing is, the wood line's the only risky part. But if you played that south side, you've got a safe tree line as well once you wall that in. So I think CSO, once we're past that first few minutes, this should be a quite comfortable spawn for him to play off of. Looking at the sacred site generation, the only issue there is if you like hunker your economy to the south side, you might lean east side of the map, and that means that Lucy should be able to quite easily lock in two sacred sites.
Yep, that's going to be a big thing. The sacred sites are not equidistant from one another. You do have two of them kind of offset to the left. So it's fairly reasonable for LucifroN to target those two and just focus over there. It's going to be interesting to see whether he walls in any of those, though, KP, because I think one of the most underrated elements of Feudal Age Delhi gameplay is walling in sacred sites. If you don't do that, at the highest level of gameplay, players will always send a single unit to decap the sacred sites, and you will never be able to maintain control over 3 of them, sometimes not even 2.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue that Delhi players have noticed is the inefficiency of it, right? Whenever you wall off like that, you're leaving units kind of exposed. You don't want to keep your whole army in one location. On top of that, you're missing out on wood that could go to extra archers, and that archer mass is so important against Zhone. Like, if you can't get that critical mass together to sniper out straight away, you'll never feel comfortable taking the fight.
Ghazi Raider opening here for the LucifroN. Of course, he did open with the Tower of Victory, but he's yet to mix in archers, as you would expect. In the long run, that's going to be his target, I guess. But of course, now with the Knights opening for CSO, you do want to go for those Ghazi Raiders. I love how he's healing up those Ghazi Raiders with the Scholars back at home, by the way, making sure that they are in nice and full condition. Both players just with one scout here. Both of them kind of using that as a scout unit for the army, making sure that they have full vision on the enemy troops.
And what we're seeing here, by the way, is the value of actually having that extra villager to build up the School of Cavalry here. It's allowed him to actually maintain an advantage on the Ghazi count. Like, when you're playing Ghazi versus Knights, you kind of want 2 Ghazi to 1 Knight. So right now, like, CSO's doing a good job of contesting that. Notice the poke does come in on Zhone, but the problem here is if you keep targeting Zhone down but you never kill her, the damage isn't permanent to her, but it is to you. So LucifroN, with these heavy injuries on initial Ghazi, he's going to have to consider pulling them back and now idling out Scholars at a critical point in the game to just heal them up.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big point over here. You do have that healing potential with the Delhi, but it still means that your Scholars are chilling back at home, healing your troops instead of aiding with research or instead of buffing production buildings, and of course, instead of actually capturing sacred sites.
I love this little poke as well. Like, CSO, if you notice no reaction there, he gets 1 or 2 free kills, right? Like, it's definitely worth this type of pressure because when you keep the Delhi boxed in their base like this, they're not capturing sacred sites. They don't even stand a chance. And that's important considering the Sanctity timing is about to trigger.
Yeah, LucifroN almost lost his scout over there. He pulled it back just in time, but CSO saw an opportunity and he jumped it. Now, KP, one thing that's a big question mark to me right now is how CSO is going to pivot. He's mixing in archers. That's not something that is useful against anything that LucifroN is making right now. Those archers are being held all the way back in his base. He hasn't yet showed them. He is confining LucifroN into his own base, but at the same time, he's still playing just 1 TC himself.
Yeah, but that's fine in this matchup, right? Like, you're not allowing the Delhi to get any of their advantages right now because the sacred sites aren't being touched. What's really crafty about the way CSO done this, though, is like it was very risky initially what he done, where he played into the archers ahead of time. When he saw the scout came home, he knew he could double down, and it's paying off now. Check what's happening. LucifroN now with a switch up into spears.
Yeah, this is clever from CSO if you think about it. He hasn't shown the archers, so LucifroN might think that this is only cavalry. Still, CSO doesn't have an answer to the Ghazi Raiders right now. This army is just something that's going to smash both of his knights and the archers, but The reason why this could be a little scary for LucifroN is because if he commits very heavily into spears, those will get evaporated by all these archers.
Yeah, one thing that's a little bit surprising that CSO isn't prepping a blacksmith yet. Like, typically, you got to understand the timing of the deli here. If you haven't seen spears this long, it's probably a blacksmith's opening, so Undermesh should be coming in first. So we should be seeing that a priority soon for CSO. It's a little bit risky how late he's doing this. Like, if he was to jump out of his base, or say the Ghazi were to jump in at that timing, he could just risk losing the entire army straight away. Go sneak on the backside here, so should eventually turn into a wall in, right? Like with the Ghazi mass just getting as big as it is, there's just going to be an impending risk that LucifroN peels them off and sends them hunting, which is typically where the deli tend to dominate so many of these matchups.
Yeah, army numbers still pretty close, so is the army value. But again, I think one of the big things is that LucifroN has his entire army together. And don't forget, these Ghazi Raiders are quicker than the Knights, so they're getting a couple of freebie hits here as CSO is retreating. And he still doesn't have a lot of answers to these Ghazi Raiders. Of course, Jeanne d'Arc can be a game changer in fights like this, and he finally does show the archers.
Yeah, and you just see the value there. One kill, immediately 14 XP. This is exactly why deli players crap their pants when they go up against this unit. Like Joan, she completely changes the dynamic of this matchup. We talked before about the French versus Delhi matchup. Felt like a good one for Delhi, but here, Joan can just contently play 1 TC. We've even now got CSO adding in spears, an unexpected detail, but a really cool one. It just allows him to pressure these fights more, right? If it turns into these little probing fights, Lucy stands a chance of reaching critical mass. But if you start pressure pointing him, where you force brutish fights toward his base, he's going to have to engage you before he's ready, and that just equals level 3 for Joan.
LucifroN is still only on 2 scholars, by the way, and one of them is capturing a sacred site. The other one was busy healing for most of the time, so he doesn't have a lot of blacksmith upgrades, KP, right now. In fact, he has only gotten the ranged defense upgrade, something that's going to be useful against these archers, but nothing else available for him right now. Curiously, he's actually getting the ranged attack upgrade next.
Yeah, because he wants to transition into the 1-1-1, right? Clash coming in though, Ghazi just trying to ride on top of them, but the Knights trying to cut them off. Cleaves coming out from Joan. The archers do peel back beautifully here. Finally, Surround's going to come in. The spearmen are being dwindled in numbers, but the archers hit even harder here. But the trade is big. The amount of XP and the Divine Restoration at the tail end of the fight. Joan most definitely going to go down here, but not before she farms up a Storm.
And all the Knights are alive, KP, and that's the big thing. I think CSO lost like 1 or 2 Knights at maximum. He had a couple of spearmen come in late to the party, but those were also clutch, picking off some of those Ghazi Raiders. And as you said, Jeanne is gone, but she has gotten a lot of XP, and most importantly, she has gotten rid of most of those Ghazi Raiders. So suddenly, you're looking at a game where CSO has 11 Knights compared to just 4 Ghazi Raiders. This is a big mobility advantage for CSO, and this is something that could be exploited for some future raids.
Exactly, right? That's kind of the deceptive thing. It's not just that Joan wins on the XP front, like she must be getting so close already off a fight that ridiculously large. It's now that you are in charge of the dynamics, which is not something that many people can brag over the Delhi. LucifroN is trying to stockpile back in those Ghazi, but remember, every time you invest more in a Ghazi, that's less archers you have. And the end goal as Delhi here is to reach that critical bundle of archers to beat anything.
Yeah, that's a big point, KP, and let's not forget the fact that LucifroN aged up with the Tower of Victory. It's a landmark that he has barely gotten any use from, and that's something that's going to be alarming for him. And now he's pivoting into archers, which is all right if you supplement it with a lot of spears against these Knights. But one thing that LucifroN is doing right now is forfeiting mobility, and that's going to make it very difficult to protect these sacred sites. Don't forget, he only has 2 scholars still. If he loses those scholars, it's going to be a pain to replenish them.
Yeah, I just love these walls on the west side that just got pointed out, right? Like CSO is trying to condense the battlefield, so there's no flanking options. Because at this point, this Ghazi count, they can't mirror and block the Knights if they go roaming. They just have to try and trade on the other side, right? So you strip those options away, there's no way 7 Ghazi are going to burn through a palisade wall quick enough.
I would love to see CSO just detaching 1 or 2 Knights to probe these berry patches. I think it would provide so much value to threaten LucifroN right now. He has all of his troops up front. Even just 1 or 2 Knights could do so much damage here. Jeanne is back on the field. Both the players now posturing towards this sacred site here. Spear's getting picked off early, though, here from CSO.
Yeah, it was a buyback shown as well, so 250 gold spent on that. It's a little bit difficult, right? Like, it's a little bit dangerous running this many spears because you can't bail out with the Knights if Jeanne gets pinched. On top of that, the attack speed is just out of this world good, right? So that's why you're seeing CSO a little bit careful, a little bit precarious about his probing. Almost going down with Zhone there. Divine Restoration gets forced, and that's not a good sign. CSO gets to back up.
Oh yeah, Jean gets pushed all the way back, but the level up comes in just in time. Jean falls a second after. CSO is going to have to bail on this, but he does get the level 3 on Jean. KP, is that enough here?
The problem here is I think he still has buyback cooldown, right? And even if he doesn't, it's 500 gold now. But just think about that for a second. 13 minutes for Zhone, level 3, right? Those are the type of numbers we didn't see frequently unless you go all the way back to Assault and Ascent's release when people just didn't understand. This is kind of unrivaled in pro play, and it's exactly why the Delhi have been struggling with this particular matchup. Once she's up, I think we're going to see big issues for LucifroN, right? Like, the reality is this should be a champions play. Champions just thrive really well here. Your opponent has gone into mass spears. You have to remember champions do get bonus damage against those. So besides that, the fact they're so absurdly tanky, it's fair to say LucifroN's going to have to pull something magical out of the hat now.
And he's been a little slow capitalizing on this momentum. He's capturing sacred sites right now, getting a market up to start and balance out that eco. Now, CSO does have a lot of exposed villagers to the south, especially those villagers in the hunt could easily become the prey of those Ghazi Raiders soon. He has started building up some towers back at home. He's understanding that he's going to be on the defensive for the time being. And he did lose a lot of his archers in that fight. He had to pull back, he saved the knights, lost the archers. Now the army count is heavily in the favor of LucifroN.
It's kind of interesting, right? Like, CSO going these spears, there was a point where it made sense, but I'm wondering if his fixation on it now is more due to the fact that he wants someone to defend the food. But then, like, why not just wall, right? Like, a wall costs you, what, 3 spearmen? Not even that. And then you can focus on getting your critical archer mass or getting more knights, right? I think the key to victory now here for CSO is build enough archers to hold the base of the champions in Zhone and just send the knights in for the kills.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do. Now, LucifroN does have 13 Ghazi Raiders and 20 spears, so he should be able to respond to this fairly quickly. CSO does have a lot of food in the bank. He has gotten some of the champions, and this is the first time in this game that we do have a raid going on. Quick reactions by LucifroN will minimize the effects of this, though.
I don't know if he saw all the knights. Yeah, I think he glanced at it. He's moving south side now with the villagers. In the meantime, Ghazi are going to discover the wall. No, there is not. No way in. Back where you came from. Looks like there was a dodge on the berries. Villagers are coming back at the worst time. Army is here, though. It's so unfortunate as well. I think CSO, a little bit of a blunder here. He never rebuilt the scout. If he had a scout on the fort with those knights, he could have snuck around the back unseen and found those berry patches.
Yeah, that's one of the big deficiencies of knights when you use them as standalone units. Their line of sight is horrendous. This is why you commonly see players accompanying their knights with one scout. As you see, they barely see anything here. In fact, they don't even know that they're still being chased by the army of LucifroN.
Yeah, honestly, it's like watching a deaf person try to do echolocation. This is the risk you run, right? It's like, it's so crazy how often, even at the highest level, we see people overlook that reboom the scout, especially when they've already got stables, right? You can at least forgive it when you're a Civ that doesn't have stables, but in this case, it's a bit of a sin. He does at least have Zhone with level 3 and the champions in now, so he can look for the main fight. The problem right here is the sacred sites are locked in, right? Like, LucifroN is starting to farm up a storm here, and the military numbers tell no lie.
Yeah, blacksmith upgrades also finally came in here for LucifroN. And that's something that he has an advantage of as well. Needs to be very careful with Jean, CSO does, because that already has been a lot of damage dealt to her. But he needs to fight here. This sacred site needs to be decapped.
Like, this is the thing, the range just doesn't hurt anymore, right? This is perfect. If you keep hitting Jean like this, you gotta be happy, CSO. You just need to deal those spears. Clash comes in. Sacred site looking like it may get decapped here. LucifroN may be hemorrhaging troops a bit too fast. If one big cleave comes out here, it could push him all the way back. And there's the cleave out. No grab straight away. Archemass is maintaining, and LucifroN, he's losing the number advantage.
Yeah, a lot of spears went down over here, so this fight is a little deceiving. Once the spearmen are gone, these archers are useless against all these knights. Bit of a flank coming in here from LucifroN with the Ghazi Raiders, but numbers are equalizing, and the army value is now in the favor of CSO.
Still keeping so many of those knights alive. Zhone, I mean, we must have Divine Restoration come and cool down soon, right? I'd imagine. She's ticking up so quick behind this. The Archer Mass really isn't high enough to put a serious dent in her anymore. Knights are just going to clash in. LucifroN, he's lost the front line. Remember, all of his troops aren't here. There's reinforcements coming, but he's about to get mopped up. And from here, I think we're going to have a cleanup for Zhone.
Yeah, that is looking grim now for LucifroN. He still has the 3 sacred sites, but he's about to lose one. He's trying to regroup here, but he's down to just 5 spears, 4 Ghazi Raiders. And when it comes to the archer numbers, that's dead even as well. But Jean does get picked off over here, which is a big loss here for CSO.
Sometimes he's CsO and sometimes he's CsO no. I mean, that's the second time he's lost Zhone in an unnecessary fashion there. Immediate buyback's going to come out. He just needs to not let the confidence get to his head. Right now, he's out-micro and won the Micro Masters, right? Like, I think the way that he's been handling those fights has been absolutely beautiful, min-maxing Zhone. He just needs to not get overconfident. It's very easy sometimes to think the game is over against Delhi, and then they fire one last shot along the broadside.
Yeah, numbers are still neck and neck over here. Don't forget, LucifroN is still controlling 3 sacred sites, and that's a lot of gold income for him. Something that he can turn into extra food he desperately needs for these Ghazi Raiders and Archers. Let's not forget, this is, I think, the domain where the berries start running dry. Same for the hunt on the opposing side. So this is where that momentum could shrink on either side very quickly.
Lucy needs to be very careful, though. He doesn't have many spears here, and if CsO reads that, he can just dive into the Archer mass. And go,
oh no! CsO isn't noticing.
This is bad. He needs to get some good trades right now because I think he's so focused on the fight, he's unlikely to notice before all the villagers are gone.
I think it was like 5 vills going down, but that's a big loss in a game that only saw 6 villagers killed combined between the 2 players. He's going to have some long walls coming in on the left side. It's going to be a nice safe haven for him. But that one Ghazi Raider is just wrecking havoc right now. 6 villager kills on LucifroN's side. And let's not forget, he does have 2 sacred sites still, giving him a decent gold trickle.
I mean, it goes back to the lack of a wall there, right? Like, a wall would make so much more sense, would have alleviated that concern, made it at least more noticeable as it came in. But, you know, this is the punishment you reap, right? When you're being a little bit too greedy. The crazy part is that he was willing to wall that entire west side, but wasn't willing to wall down here. Crazy to think how different this game could look right now, because yes, he's ahead, but that eco lead that LucifroN now has with the 2 sacred sites locked in means that CsO is going to have to rush to try and take advantage of the remaining lead.
LucifroN also picked off another Veil there and pulled back that injured Ghazi Raider. He's just microing the heck out of those villagers. But big fight coming up here. Not a lot of knights on the field anymore for CsO, and that's a definitive difference between this fight and the previous ones. His own frontline has kind of disappeared.
I mean, the other issues you notice, and he has to focus on cleaving down the Ghazi because he has no protection for the archers anymore. You want to be diving into that archer mass. They're your real long-term problem here. It's just not going to work. This retreat is going to cost him dearly. Good dodge as well. LucifroN just making sure he doesn't hang around Zhone for too long. The champions more or less are being ignored through all of this. And CsO, I think he's going to be fully pushed back here.
His eco is a train wreck. He doesn't have the eco to supplement this assault anymore. He only has food income right now. No wood in the bank. Those gold miners got butchered. That's why he doesn't have any knights on the field. And he's lucky if he gets out of here with Jean, but he won't. Villagers were actually pulled.
What?
This is either a misclick or a complete kamikaze. No, that had to be a landmark snipe attempt.
I think that was in... He's still got some economy on the flanks. So this... If it's an all-in, it's a very intriguing all-in. I think CsO's brain is rotted from what just occurred the last few minutes because none of this makes sense anymore.
He pulled every single villager he had. Look at the income.
No, look at the berries on the south side. Like, he has some people still out on the berries. So they didn't get the memo.
Now he's sending them... I'm so puzzled, KP. This is either a giga misclick or this was an all-in attempt.
I mean, can we check if he has textiles? Because if he was doing that without textiles, then no. Just no.
Yeah. That must have been a misclick then.
That had to have been a misclick. I can't imagine you make an all-in play there and you don't pump textiles to make it happen. Like, even then, it's an absolute stretch against that many archers to say, I'll end the game here. But I can't believe this, man. Like, CsO, the first, 16 minutes of this game? Mwah, chef's kiss. Creme de la creme. Looked like he had LucifroN on the ropes, dead to rights. But then within 2 minutes, everything goes scramble brain. LucifroN just turns him in the blender, and all of a sudden we've got a game that looks almost impossible for the Spaniard to lose.
I don't want to over-exaggerate the significance of that one Ghazi Raider, but that guy is the hero of this game. He single-handedly pushed away the villagers from this gold mine, also managed to kill 7 villagers in a game that only had 8 villager kills in total. And that is why CsO started to lose out on that Knight's production. Compound of the Defender coming in here for LucifroN, looking to get to Castle Age. Same thing here for CsO. I think he's banking resources for Castle. Big difference between the two, though, is that LucifroN has triple the army right now.
No, but I agree. That Ghazi needs to be dubbed Ghazi of De Leon. Right? It was incredible what he managed to pull off there because CsO, you can tell that he was microing like a god in those fights. But the problem is, it's one thing to be able to micro fantastic in a fight, but you have to argue, what are you giving up? What are you not looking at? And that's something that LucifroN was just fully attuned to. Raw Institute now on the way, but this is one of the most depressing-looking institutes I've seen in a long time. Like, it's the type that sends you to a different kind of institute that maybe makes you a bit stir-crazy. 2 nights, and you're going with this choice.
I don't get it, KP. Obviously, Guildhall would be better in the very long run, and I feel like he knows that this game isn't going to go 30, 40 minutes long. But at the same time, Guildhall gives you something, whereas Royal Institute barely gives you anything right now with only 2 knights on the field. And it's not like he's got any more knights in production. He's got 0 knights in queue, he's got 2 on the field, and he's going to get Royal Institute.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe Counter Saddles for that one shout on the backside could turn it around. It's like, if a Ghazi can do 7 villager kills, how many can a knight do? I wouldn't bank on that. This is looking a bit grim. It was Compound Defender, which means we're going to see eco scaling as time goes on. Great job by LucifroN to consistently maintain 2 sacred sites throughout this game, by the way. We talked about this whole idea that the pressure would be leveraged to the east side of the map, and that's exactly the way it played out. It's because CSO needed to defend that eco, and it's still what makes the fact that there was even a sneak in the first place all that more perplexing. But now that we move a little bit deeper into the game, we've got to look for some sort of recovery arc here for CSO. If this knight pulls off a miracle...
Nah,
okay, yeah, okay, go next.
Yeah, the big difference between this raid and the one that came in from LucifroN back then is that LucifroN isn't distracted. He doesn't need to micro his army right now, so the moment he gets an attack notification, he knows it's a raid coming in. Compare that to what happened to CsO. He was actively fighting a battle, he was microing Jeanne d'Arc and his army, and he didn't notice that his villagers or the gold mine got butchered.
Yeah, another thing that's just beautifully done is LucifroN, his farm transition came in so much quicker, right? Like, CsO's in the midst of that. The discounts do help a little bit with the Consecrate, but they have the limitations. Lance has now shown up till that night as well. Clash into the main, Archers peppering in. They don't even have the veterancy, but I just don't know if it matters here.
This is a little dicey here for LucifroN. Don't forget, you still have a full HP Jean over here, TC Fire as well. You're fighting against veteran archers. I don't know, this might be a little overzealous from LucifroN.
I mean, you say that, but he's trading out pretty well, right? Like, raw mass numbers make sense here. I've talked to a few pros on this, and they have this feeling like sometimes veterancy is overrated. Yeah. Just having numbers can be the MVP, because otherwise, when you have veterancy like this, you're often overkilling these more squishy archers.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I feel like this might have been a little overly aggressive over here. I'm not sure if he needed this assault against the enemy town center. Now he's kind of falling back. He's still far away from the veterans, and you see he's starting to lose all those archers. Suddenly, the numbers are equaling out.
The interesting thing is if he can secure the relics behind this, right? Because then you can argue it was space. There's a bit of logic behind it. But if he's a little bit slow to recoup that last relic on the right side, then I agree. This starts to look a little bit wavesome. And then the other issue I have with this, right, is like you're going into crossbows now against Arbitrier. Long term, that game plays out against you. I don't care what people think about Tower of Victory. The reality is Arbitrier with ranged armor and how Jean uses that element in a comp as the game goes on just eclipses practically any crossbow civ in the game right now.
And you're also playing crossbows into enemy archers that already have veterancy. Yeah. So I guess CsO lives to see another day, but he's still only on 2 knights. He's actually finally making that scout again, so he's going to have that vision. I really wish he went with the Guildhall here, KP, because I feel like, given the status of the game right now, a Guildhall would actually be a very valuable landmark going into minute 30.
Yeah, I wonder if he's going for like an all-in punch with Arbitrary, which is kind of perplexing, right? Like, you don't typically do this in Castle Age, whereas Jean really thrives on Arbitrary as in Imperial, right? You don't have to force it this early, you just kind of grind it out and you reach the next stage, courtesy of Guildhall's power. But the biggest issue I'm seeing here is, like, we haven't even seen the eco-inflation yet, right? Like, that's coming in about a minute and a half here. Relic situation is still one to be grabbed. I wouldn't be surprised if we look at the fog. Maybe LucifroN doesn't see that relic on the east side, because that should definitely have been picked up by now. And more villagers.
Oh my lord, again.
Eco.
Look at that, 12 villager kills, and that's a big difference now. CsO is mining stone like a madman. I think it's going to be for an extra TC, although it could be technically for an all-in keep approach. But he needs, if he wants to play a long game here, he needs to have additional town centers. He's down by 14 eco. LucifroN is going to have keeps for extra villager production. And most importantly, LucifroN is going to be sitting on 4 relics and 2 sacred sites. That's a heck of a lot of extra eco here for LucifroN to work with.
Yeah, I mean, his farm transition as well has just been so much cleaner on the timing, right? Like, that's why you're seeing CSO struggle so much. That's usually why you go Guildhall so often, right? You only go Raw Institute when you think you can end the game, because then you kind of pad your economy at this very fragile state. We have got that second TC now coming on the west side. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes up to 3 in that corner, because anything less feels like it's going to be too slow.
I think he's gonna go for a keep, because he has gotten the keep discount upgrade already.
No, that's for consecration, right? You just get that on all buildings. So any building you consecrate, you're talking about the one where you get gold and wood cost discounts, right?
Oh, no. He has gotten the actual upgrade for the castle knight discount.
Companions equipment?
It's the name of it. I actually forgot the name. Give
You
me
mean
one
the one
sec.
in the top left? Yeah, like I'm trying to frag my mind on what you're talking about. You sure? Like, no, you're talking about the
Enlistment
French, right?
incentives.
No, that's French. Remember, with Joan, it's the one that gives you consecration discounts on wood and gold costs. So it's like all the buildings she consecrates. Usually
yeah,
it's just food, but when you get that,
I got baited by
upgrade-
the icon. It's a ordnance company.
Yeah. That's
It's so weird that it's two different decks, but you do have the same icon for them. All I know is that, there's this discount deck coming in from the Royal Institute, and I saw
It
the
is a little
icon
bit
for that
bait.
like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's a little bit base. So basically, that allows him to get wood and gold discounts on consecrated buildings now. Usually, it's great in this matchup for Mangonel transition, but I'm shocked we're not even seeing that. Like, that's the one way I could see CSO recovering this. He's got low food, loads of access to wood and gold. Like, you're up against an army that is 2/3 ranged here, and you're not playing into siege at all.
What I'm baffled about is no walls on the right side for CSO. He walled off half of the map on the left side, and he refuses to wall on the right side, and he keeps bleeding villagers as a consequence. He has lost 17 vills in this game right now, and that's part of the reason why he's behind in eco. Even without those losses, he would have a tough time against all those relics and sacred sites, but at least he does have level 4 Jean, and that could be a big game changer here.
Yeah, he's got Mecha Jean, and I think this is the logic, right? The attack speed booster, which you just see there, Valor's Inspiration activated, as well as Crossbow Skirts down the line, he's hoping that the Arbitrary can just carry him through everything.
But he's still getting candled settles for his 3 knights.
It's very important that they get maximum damage, Litter. They might kill a villager sometime this game.
LucifroN is not fully walled, but he's getting pushed all the way back, and his villagers are starting to get exposed over here. KP, CSO is still in a tough spot, but he is holding on, mostly thanks to Jean here.
Well, yeah, I think LucifroN made a mistake taking that fight the way he did as well. Whenever you see Valor's Inspiration get activated, you need to back away, right? It's one of those classics. Like, I always use it in other games. Like, if you think your high-value activatable abilities, if you can disengage from them, do it. Like, Dota 2, one we always just say is some BKBs just walk away, right? Because they use their magic immunity, but if they can't do anything with it, you don't care. It's the same here. If Valor's Inspiration gets used there, and you're up against just crossbows, back up. Just take a few steps
my lord,
back,
there's a
and nothing
keep coming
happens.
in, though. CSO can counter keep this, by the way. He does have enough stone. There's an overchop on the wood line, though. So LucifroN can commit against this.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, you definitely cannot try to drop a keep here. So, like, CSO's at risk of losing his double eco up in the corner, right? Like, he's going to go for a very defensive keep. Honestly, all LucifroN needs to do now is drop a siege workshop behind this and start to slow siege.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because CSO is still down by 20 villagers despite being on 3 DCs. Like, his eco is just not good. And I think part of the reason why this is not working out for him is because LucifroN is simply flooding him with a lot of units because his eco is so much better.
Yeah. I mean, that comes to the earlier farm transition, right? The reality is, even when you're just going arbitrary are quite food expensive, same as the crossbows on the other side. Clash coming in, though. A few villagers are going to be chopped down as they build up the castle. And this is where Lucy should likely just drop the siege workshop behind it. I mean, there's so much value on the screen as well, right? I don't think you even target the keep first. You just take out the 2 TCs.
Yep, exactly. Especially because the front DC is very much exposed over here. There's the siege workshop you kind of mentioned. And these are expansion DCs. They don't have a lot of HP, so it's fairly easy to trap them down. On the opposing side, CSO is going to have to invest into siege of his own because it's not just the TC that's being exposed. It's the whole front of his base.
Yeah, and I mean, the weird part is he set up the farms on the south side, but his way of building villages is entirely on the west side. It's a little bit of a fragmented design here. I guess the logic is if one area gets shut down, both don't. But I feel like if one area fails, you both do anyway. It might have just been better to keep this all together. But it seems like the logic for CSO is to hide the play. Thing is, it's very hard to sneak these type of moves by LucifroN, right? A player that focuses on raid is one that's always looking for free information. LucifroN has definitely paid his dues in blood to grab this info. so... Oh no. We seem to have a small gap in the defense line here. This is starting to hurt, by the way. Like, Zhone isn't feeling as tanky anymore.
Exactly. I mean, it's tough to be tanky when you're outnumbered 7-1.
But don't worry, we have a cannon Liddicourt. Oh, okay. They almost killed that knight.
That cannon is going to be short-lived, although once again, LucifroN is diving in, but I feel like, again, CsO is just being outnumbered so heavily over here.
Yeah, it's like Zhone always gets away, but it's almost like that dastardly villain that makes off into the sunset, but leaves all of his little companions to die, right? That's the kind of feeling you're getting here. It's like, congrats, Zhone lives again, but now you once again have been reset to 0 army. If this was a guild hall game, that's great. You probably have like 3,000 food in the bank to build a new army. This is not a guild hall game.
Exactly. And don't forget, the first time that LucifroN had most of his army cleaned up in the enemy base, he didn't have the veterancy upgrades. Now those upgrades are coming in. He's going to be full blacksmith upgrades. He's got a lot of food and wood in the bank. On the opposing side, not a lot of gold for CsO to work with. In fact, his gold miners have been raided for quite some time. So his gold income is atrocious. He doesn't have a massive resource bank. And he is actually behind by 60 population right now.
Yeah, and the reason why LucifroN just keeps pushing like this as well is he's trying to stop the full heal coming out for Zhone so that she just basically eventually dies, right? Because at this point, paying 1,000 gold to bring her back just doesn't seem feasible. Like, CsO is stretched thin as it is. He's barely got any gold to work with. He's gathering way too much stone for a castle like I just don't know why you want to invest in anymore. Like, your opponent already started to build a counter to castles. Army size is practically non-existent at this stage. I mean, I'm wondering what CsO sees as his recovery arc here. Has he just been reading a few too many Reddit threads? Has he heard that Zhone is OP?
I feel like he's just hoping that LucifroN makes a mistake at this point. And let's not forget, we see everything, players do not, so he might not know how big LucifroN's lead is. Although, at this point, he should rightfully assume that LucifroN has the relics. He knows about the sacred sites. Interestingly, LucifroN never captured that third sacred site back. He actually could have that timer for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it got like decapped to one stage. It's going to be coming in again soon with the keep drop over there. That's pretty much confirmation. No. But you know, the interesting thought here as well is Marching Drills isn't too far away. I actually think once Marching Drills is in, this is over. Because Zhone won't be able to run away anymore, right? Like, you'll be able to run him with Men-at-Arms and Pincher to get the finishing blow.
I feel like the big problem here for CsO is that if LucifroN just sits back and fortifies those 3 sacred sites, by the time CsO booms back into this game, he's going to have that sacred site victory. Although, you do have to credit CsO. He actually tried to save that relic from the monastery. And given how little his map control was, it's actually a miracle he had a relic even.
Yeah, well, that one was boxed in the corner where he set up the 2 TCs, right? So that was always going to be a given there. I'm glad he picked it up. I've seen games where players just ignore it for a long time. And what is that atrocious castle?
Lord Doubt almost smiled upon us, but looks like we're going to have to wait for that a little more. CsO's got a lot of stone, and I guess he's trying to just hang on to this game, try to survive, dropping keeps, but don't forget, LucifroN does have siege as well, and I'm not sure if CsO has boiling oil, so like at this point, given the lead that LucifroN has, he could dive castles with Men-at-Arms.
I believe you mean lukewarm oil, and yes, I have a feeling it will not stop LucifroN from going in. That... yeah. Just gave me a nightmare. He's trying to send mangoes back home from out here. Like, this all went wrong at 16 minutes, right? But, like, what we can say this castle age is CsO's idea of spreading the map wide, in theory, seems like a good idea to divest your risks. But when you're this far behind, just stick all in one location. It's do or die anyway, and it looks like it's finally going to be die. Zhone not feeling that tanky anymore. Her own choke point's working against her. An opening to wipe out all the arbitrary, and this surely should be the point where CsO admits it's all over.
What a back-and-forth game, KP, though. I mean, we ended up with a 37-minute-long opening game here, and CsO definitely had his moments. At the end of the day, I feel like he was a little short-sighted. In general, I feel like he did a lot of things that could have been done differently, and I don't think he adapted to the circumstances as well as he could have had. Talk about this whole Royal Institute setup. And in general, I feel like his responses to what happened in this game were a little slower than LucifroN's, and that's part of the reason why, in the end, LucifroN will take game number 1.
Yeah, I was starting to wonder for a second there if Zhone translates to Lu Bu in Chinese. He was believing a little bit much in what she could actually do with the level 4, but finally willing to wave that white flag. An unexpected victory of the Delhi, but not unexpected for a player like LucifroN. Great start to this series. Really great composure coming out from him. I think that's the difference we're seeing between these two players already. CsO has definitely got the cojones, the muxy, the ability to end games against some of the best players in the world. The problem is actually getting that killing blow, right? Like he played 90% of this perfect, done everything he needed to, and then slipped up in one vital, crucial moment. And you see how quickly all the work can unravel against a pro like LucifroN.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big differences between the two players over here, especially highlighting the fact that these two have never met in a competitive set before, is that LucifroN does have a lot of competitive experience, whereas CsO, he did play in tournaments before, but he's more of a team player actually rather than a 1v1 player.
Yep.
And in a team game setting, you do have a small breathing room where you can recover. In a 1v1, all the attention from your opponent is on you, and oftentimes if you're on the back foot, if you're struggling a little, a pro player like LucifroN will never give you that breathing room to recover. And I think that's part of the reason why CsO tried to stay in this game, but he was never given the opportunity to come back into it.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing now as well is with the second map where we're looking at moving out, which was a creation by Cavalli. Really fun map, by the way, folks. Basically, you start on a central island with basically just wood. You have to go out to the edge to get gold, right? It's meant to be quite a late feudal timing. But an interesting detail has already arisen. Is CsO, given all the options at his disposals, things like the Malians, the English, maybe even some Abbasid picks I've seen a few players experiment with, he chose the Zhuji. Not necessarily a terrible pick, but also is now weak in his draft later on, right? Because now what happens is Holy Island has to be English. LucifroN will just pick Mongols there. We've discovered recently that Mongols actually do still have some viability in tournament play. And surprisingly enough, you might remember a long time ago, they were discovered to be the one solution to English cheesy men-at-arms plays in the early age, right? Where you just shut them down with horseman spam. So that might prove to be CsO's undoing. The interesting detail is what LucifroN has thrown out as reaction to this. Order the Dragon was something that's being slept on, memed about. LucifroN's own bro put it S tier last tournament in his tier list, then proceeded to not pick it, and almost everyone lost with it. So felt like he was doing a little bit of capper on us. But the interesting part is I think Recon was the one recently who discovered this Civ actually slaps on water maps. He was able to dunk on some players on Holy Island in particular, and I think a lot more people are now revisiting the Civ when it comes to an opportunity to fish and play Navy instead of having to build those very fat and expensive units.
Exactly. We've actually seen a lot of Order of the Dragon in these water or hybrid maps recently. So it's definitely not unprecedented to see this civilization being picked here by LucifroN. And at the same time, we also need to highlight this second map pick here in the Surfshark map draft. You do have CsO picking the Chaos map of all, and I feel like that's kind of what you expect from him. He tried to play a traditional game on the classic Dry Arabia, but, that didn't really work out for him, so he's going to try something fundamentally different, and I would not be shocked if he played a very crazy game over here, truly living up to the name of Chaos.
We'll have to see what we can deliver. I mean, looking deep in this draft, there's probably going to be what Ibids for Hillendale, then that leaves you Abbasid for Kawasan. I would be surprised if we see a Malian pick come out unless he felt like there's something he could counter here. Definitely shouldn't be seeing on Holy Island, but Lucifer, he still has strong picks throughout the draft, right? Like Japan is probably top 2 for Kawasan, I'd have to say at this stage, it feels like. Maybe top 3. Then Hillendale, Byzantines have actually been looking really strong there. They get a very safe, fast castle. They even have a way of pressuring early with Lombos. So, if LucifroN wins this one, the rest of his draft looks pretty clean and cut. I think CsO may be a bit more of an uphill battle. We'll have to see if he can start to reset things here. Game 1 goes to LucifroN. Now we hop to the second one. It's time for some moving out. And we have got CsO on the Zhuji's legacy. LucifroN, meanwhile, taking to the polar opposite, the underrated Civ that no one wants to touch. It is Order of the Dragon.
Moving out, the map of choice here in the Chaos category in the first round of Masters of Realms. And KP, this is one of my favorite maps. It's definitely on the wackier side, but that's exactly why I love it. Very little place that you start with here on the Central Island, no goal to work with, but as you kind of highlighted before, one of the cool things that you get from the Chinese and their variants on this map is the ability to get that goal you need for Feudal Age with the tax.
Exactly, right? And it's not just that, there's other crazy details. Like for Jushi in particular, you'll still go for a meditation garden in the corner, but quite often if you check all these corners, you may be noticing a recurring theme. There tends to be stone there. That equals hand cannon slits. The mid game could just turn into a plethora of outposts on that central island, sniping down the enemy eco. So keep an eye out for that if it goes deep enough. I think LucifroN's goal is to not let it get that deep. Likely he's going to be very aggressive with his positioning on the outside. I wouldn't even be surprised if we see some early gilded meta arms to try and control the outer island.
This map is actually a classic AoE map, by the way. This is a map that's kind of inspired by Hamburger in AoE 2, which is probably an even crazier version of this. So, I gotta say, I'm very glad that this made it into AoE 4. I'm not so glad that the map's name is a little bit more boring. I personally prefer Hamburger to moving out.
I think you're just hungry. Plenty of fish in that CV to dive in and munch on, though.
Yeah, that could be true as well.
The interesting thing is, like, I was talking to Cavalli about this, and he said he liked the idea that I came up with for like an alternate map. I said it'd be really cool to see this map if there were cliffs, like cutting the players apart. So kind of like if you imagine wood walls center, right? So that basically you couldn't just run across your opponent's side. You had to play out onto the flanks and then round, or you could chop through the tree line. So we might have another kind of hybridized map coming in from Kaivayu on that front soon. But this is very interesting because of its design. There's so many quirky plays, like Marlians in particular was an undiscovered gem. I remember I looked at this map, I got flashbacks to when Marlians first released. The whole idea of just putting javelin throwers inside a transport ship, or rather anything inside them to get the javelins, proved pretty effective. I think I even saw 1 or 2 players actually practicing that particular strat. So don't expect to see Juji everywhere, right? Like, I do maintain that I think Juji are going to be probably the most lethal pick next to the obvious kings of AoE 4 right now when it comes to Master of Realms, and it's solely because of their presence on these water hybrid maps.
Yeah, and you see the advantages of getting Jushi over here. You do have that Imperial Officer already buffing your wood income. That's something that's going to help tremendously when it comes to getting the wood you need for the fishing boats. And of course, you do have that tax income as well. So looking at CSO, he's already at 130 gold compared to 100. LucifroN is yet to mine gold for his feudal age progress.
Yeah, and there's so many added benefits, right? Like when you're always just supervising wood, great. That means your housing is cheaper. Well, village is already cheaper anyway. And this, in some ways, kind of hurts Lucy more, right? It's like you're actually idling more of your efficient eco when you walk 4 villages out here like this, as you guys got the scout there as well. And the other rough part is, like, he did choose to go for the alternative corner. He didn't try to get the center, which I thought he might lean into. Logic being there is if you want to contest the Juji on the mainlands, you're half the distance away, right? Now this is maximum distance away.
Yeah, this is something I also wanted to highlight, KP, but you beat me to it. When you move out to this outside area, you basically idle your villagers, and that's not something that CSO needs to do that early. Of course, Order of the Dragon, your villagers are also worth more, so you actually have a lot of idle time, I guess, what you would call it. But when you look at Jushi, you do have that gold income mostly coming from tax. So, as you said, you basically can get the gold you need for Feudal Age without actually moving out, so you have a lot less effective idle eco.
Now, you didn't get the OP spawn there on the west side. Just noticed the berries didn't spawn next to each other. I've noticed some spawns do this. Like, if you check the northern corner, you can see it very clearly. Double berries next to a big fat tree line, and you could probably clip the gold there. That would be an absolute jackpot here. But most notably, what he's getting from that west side corner is that stone. And I can guarantee you, if this game slogs out and we go 25, 30 minutes, you will start to see outposts erected on that central island with hand cannon slits coming in.
Yeah, second dock coming in here. That's going to be all the way at the very northern position here of this island. There's a second dock as well for LucifroN, but big difference between the two is that LucifroN is just now aging up, so he's going to be quite a bit behind compared to his counterpart, and CSO should have the upper hand when it comes to getting the first combat ship out.
Yeah, and this is something I think is a bit of a disadvantage for OTD and HRE in this map, is like you're not going to drop an Archon on the outside, you're always going to drop it inside. So these defensive outpost emplacement type civs are just going to get more advantage out of blocking you, right? Another thing I'm expecting to see, actually, as time goes on, is people starting to use these transport ships, not just to scout as they are now, but also to body block. I've seen some cool plays. Like, the beautiful thing is, you know me, I come from Dota 2, I love body blocking. Some people hate it. It's very hard to do on land, but you can do it. But on water, the hitboxes are so clunky and the pathfinding is so delayed, you can actually delay your opponent a lot. And one thing I did notice one or two players doing, at least the transport ship, is when their opponent goes out later than them, they take their transport ship over and delay the villagers from ungarrisoning on the other side.
Yeah, here is the first junk already firing away at those fishing boats. LucifroN is going to opt to repair that fishing boat instead of actually garrisoning it into the dock. He's trying to just maintain as much working force here in terms of fishing boats until that first Hawk arrives.
Yeah, and you should have enough time to break away, right? It's come out south side dock. Unfortunately for the north side, I actually think he probably could have killed the archer ship, but CsOH should be able to, quite frankly, lead this. He's going to be annoying, though, right? He set up a dock on the south side as well, so if LucifroN overchases this, it could even be like a second archer ship coming in from the south side.
Yeah, this is an interesting setup here for CsO because, ooh, nice little body block here by LucifroN using the transport to try and keep that junk. CsO does get away, but
yeah, it's the difference in move speed, right?
Back to the point of those docks, this allows him to threaten LucifroN's fishing eco from both sides, and it's something that could be very interesting to look at, especially considering that this way, LucifroN might actually lose out on some of his fishing eco, whereas CsO's own fishing eco is very nice and safe right now.
Yeah, it's like Lucy's in a reactionary state, right? He's got the 1-1-1 build, whereas CsO, I really want to see him use that summon dock. He's waiting for his moment, right, to just kind of distract on north and then send one in. Could be huge here. Like, the idle time alone could just set Lucy back. And we are seeing that Rax play we talked about earlier. LucifroN queuing up the first Gilded Men-at-Arms. This is an expensive investment.
Yeah, I think the other thing that this dock gives you to the south is a vision. So many times we see players trying to flank around with a couple of demos, surprise the opponent. Having that dock out there gives you some sort of vision, and that's something that's going to help you potentially detect this aggression coming your way. Looks like CsO is going to aggress this once again. He's got 3 war chunks to the 1 Hawk of LucifroN. LucifroN does have a single demo to work with, but he's investing some of his resources into some Gilded Men-at-Arms.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? Like, you play the mainlands because you come after the Meditation Garden. It's not quick. It does take some time, but long-term it pays off, and it's very important here because if you look what CsO has done, he's actually carved up territory. He's taken 3 of the 4 fishing pockets. If we get to the stage where Naval Aristocrats come in, it's going to be very difficult for LucifroN to contest either side. So it's critical that he tries to get in and start denying the value on that Medi-Garden. Sadly, playing as the Order Dragon, that's very difficult to do, right? Like, you decrease what it gives by 10% per unit. Well, sucks for the Dragons that the units cost double what anyone else's do.
Oh, that Gilded Men-at-Arms eating a lot of the firepower from these combat ships, and this is actually pretty big. That is a half that Gilded Men-at-Arms.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's going on land, though. Like, I genuinely thought he was going to go for the Medi-Garden. This is a little bit shocking of a play. I'm not sure it's going to work. I mean, he might get a little bit of idle time at home. The pressure on water is bigger here, right? Like, the demo ship's trying to sneak in. Funnily enough, CsO could have actually tried to pump a demo ship right now. That 10% increased production speed, they actually come out very quick. Instead, it looks like he's at risk of losing double Springald here.
Oh, nice little snipe with his own junk. He actually does not sacrifice a single ship for this. In the end, he does lose the fishing boat. But he does have that war junk coming out, and suddenly LucifroN is retreating. He did lose one of his ships to the south here. And I guess this is... Oh, back at home, though.
Yep, bigger problems. Demos are coming in to chase. So it looks like the Springald ships... It's not even lose one.
He gets away.
I can't believe this. Dude, LucifroN, I think this Gilded Men-at-Arms play actually cost him control of this game right now. This is insane. It done nothing. You're sending a Men-at-Arms in past ships to dive a hand cannon split TC. I'm just puzzled what the thought process there was. Is there really a world in which you get enough idle time to ever justify that?
Yeah, it's a weird choice. Now he's going for the Meditation Gardens, but his own fishing eco is being shut down. I guess the silver lining is that he actually damaged a lot of those war chunks, so CsO had to pull those back. But when the dust settles, it's 7 war chunks against just 3 Hawks, and now you're looking at a position where the transport ships get picked up, so access to this outside land area for LucifroN will be limited.
It's like villagers did realize they're being stabbed in the face. They're going to try to run away. Archer ships, in the meantime, chasing down Demo to keep it busy. But this turned into quite the pincher. Sure, you're keeping these Springald ships alive, but it's deceptive. The cost is high. Fishing boats are getting taken out. CsO's eco lead is extending. Transport. Oh, we need to be careful that gets target down. I think that's 6 villages.
That would be massive. The junks are gone.
Dude, LucifroN is playing a serious game of chicken here, and he's trying not to get roasted.
I wonder if that's a bait. I actually wonder if he's trying to make CsO target that, because it's a very tanky ship. And at the same time, it looks like he gets away with the villagers. Demos do trade off. Still 8 war chunks, though, for CsO. I think his reinforcements are just now coming in.
Yeah, LucifroN is about to lose all control of water. This is a bad sign, especially when you consider that Archon on the mainlands, or rather Central Island, rather. only allows you to get wood, right? So you're not buffing up the rest of your economy. Yes, you are Order the Dragon villagers, so you are still better, but it's going to be a huge advantage here for CSO. He's even got the demo ships coming in. This is an indicative sign that he's going to clear up the docks. LucifroN doesn't really have much to contest this.
Yeah, LucifroN doesn't have a single galley himself. Actually, he does have one somewhere, but he doesn't have a lot of answers to demo ships on his own. His fishing boats are now gone. His navy is mostly gone as well. And I guess the silver lining is that CSO is out of gold.
Can we just highlight, by the way, how appropriately named this is for the Chaos Realm? Like, this is one of the most chaotic games I think we've seen so far. That fight on the ponds, like, amongst the fishing boats, has been an absolute slaughter on both sides. You are right, the gold is now a problem. CSO can't pump additional demo ships here, but really...
Yeah, but look at the food for LucifroN at the same time.
Yeah, that's it. He saw it, he agrees, he calls GG. So CSO, a shaky first game, but firm on the strike back in number 2.
Oh man, you summarized this perfectly. This is exactly why this map is in the chaos category. Back and forth naval battles all across the board. Villagers in transport ships potentially being used as a bait or just getting caught in the crossfire. At the same time, scrappy ecos back at home as raids do happen on both sides. In the end, CSO utilizes this chaos map to turn this set back on its track. And, you know, this is a big one for him. He had some momentum in game number 1 on Dry Arabia, but that fell into the hands of LucifroN. Now we're looking at an even series heading into game number 3.
Yeah, but this is where things are getting very telling, right? Like when we look at that game 3, I did mention picking the GG here does somewhat weaken your draft as it progresses, makes you very predictable, whereas I think LucifroN has a little bit more flexibility as to what remains. And it looks like it is going to be that Abasa pick. When I mentioned this, it's likely now going to be CSO picking English on Holy Island, and Ibid should be coming out in Hillendale. People recently discovered that Ibid is actually quite effective in Hillendale because it's cheaper to wall off your high ground than it is to build double outposts to protect your gold investment, right? So you get a little bit of a freer castle age with that type of build. I think I've even seen a few people trying advancement wing in feudal just because, given how defensive the map is, usually desert raiders struggle to find raid value. But we'll see if we get to that one. China versus Abbasis is an intriguing one, though. You know, I think Abbasis have been looking very strong this map at the moment. I don't want to discredit China, but I'm wondering if this newly found desirability on getting the Rams ultra early may just screw the plans for LucifroN.
Oh, hybrid map here. I see this setup as an interesting one because you kind of highlighted how China and its variants, the Jushi, can make things very interesting on these hybrid maps. But at the same time, I'm actually wondering if CSO is going to once again channel that inner chaos he's looking for and play something very similar to what we've seen here on Moving Out. Because Kawasan is closer to a chaotic map than it is to a classic open land map like Dry Arabia. So in many ways, this map could also play into that play style that he's going for. Definitely more so than, let's say, Hillendale would.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is actually if we get into any sort of Camelot comp. You know, if you see a world in which LucifroN isn't bothering to mass Chiganu, Camelotches have been stomping on this map at the moment. The extra food, like it's a revelation to players how good Camelotches can be. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that type of thing. Obviously, feudal is critical here. You know, LucifroN, he may have to consider dropping the Barbican first, which is something Chinese players are never happy with. You should be able to tell that quite quickly. If he decides to not go for an Imperial Official straight away, there's a good likelihood that we're looking at an Imperial Academy opening. If he does get it first, still could be an IA, but all of a sudden Barbican's on the table. But it's time to stick game number 3 on the table. We are heading into Kawasan, China versus the Abbasids. And while China is definitely looking like a strong pick all around, it's fair to say these recent buffs, the Abbasids, have gone the extra distance.
Exactly. Spawning in on the right side is going to be CSO playing as the color red with the Abbasid dynasty. And on the other side, you're going to have LucifroN playing as the color yellow with the Chinese. Once again, this is the first time that these two players have ever met in a competitive set. And we're not just talking about S-tier tournaments, A-tier tournaments. We're looking at an ever situation. They haven't met even in a tiny show match or a tiny tournament before.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because like getting into this day, a lot of people were like, "Oh, 3-0 for LucifroN." I'd already predicted a few days ago. I think this is going to be a 5-game series. I think these two are actually surprisingly closely matched. CSO is a rising phoenix right now. Like it's incredible what he's done. We even mentioned earlier on the broadcast that he has a positive win rate up against Louis MT. Louis, I think most people would actually fairly agree is a top 6 player in AOE 4 right now, hands down. So, you know, that type of caliber in mind, CSO is definitely not one to be trifled with or underrated. And with a pick like the Abbasids, with how they've been performing recently, especially on this map, I actually would maybe even slightly favor him here up against the Chinese.
Yeah, it's a tricky setup here, but one thing is sure, KP. Looking at Group D here in Masters of Realms, we have LucifroN, CsO, WAM, and Battletune. This is a stacked group, especially when you consider how much in shape WAM is right now. So this is going to be a tough group to advance from, and of course, whoever wins this first series is going to win, who is going to have a much better chance of qualifying to the playoffs in the end from this group.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of these groups aren't easy pickings per se, right? Like, I think the one that I felt might be a little bit easier is, like, Group B. I think, like, BC and Killjoy, the standouts there for me, especially because B, you know, there's been question marks about how much you're playing. Group C, though, Puppypaw, Anatan, Recon, Vortex. I mean, Recon may have just been seen as, like, what's going to happen there, right? But with his recent resurgence coming back after a little bit of a break, he's looking on fire again. Vortex, we need, you know, he's been playing a decent amount. It's similar to B, has he been splitting the time? And then Group A, Louis MT, Marine Lord, Cat, Dimu. You know, Cat is the question mark. The other three definitely capable, especially with Dimu playing some of his best AOE 4 at the moment. So fair to say that we've got stacked groups across the way, and I'd have it no other way, man. I hate it when you get those groups where you just haven't got enough good competitive players. It's like, oh yeah, that one's gonna go through. Oh yeah, that one's gonna go through. Oh, and that one, and then I don't care about the rest, right? Like we've got, I think, a pool of players where I would say there's maybe 2 or 3 maximum where I'd be like, I would be shocked if they would make playoffs.
Yeah, but that's, I think, the cool thing in this scene right now. You have a lot of up-and-coming players that are challenging the quote-unquote old guard, and that makes this tournament, as well as the upcoming Red Bull Vololo, a very exciting tournament to look at. But first, I think we are going to have to take a look at how this game is playing out here, KP. So far, very standard openings here, but the 2 players do share the same bond, which is basically the first benchmark to look at when you look at a Kawasan game. Are the players sharing pawns, or are they splitting the pawns between the 2 of them in Dark Age? The fact that they are sharing pawns makes it even more important to be the first player in Feudal Age, something that's a little difficult to accomplish with the Abbasids if you go the classic way.
Yeah, this is like one of the tough things when the map spawns like this, though, right? Like they both actually spawned east side, so they're going to be pivoting towards that east side lake 'cause it's more efficient. Can we check in LucifroN's base? Really important detail here. I mentioned the Imperial officials. He did build one. Okay, so that's a good sign. Like you can tell very quickly if it's going to be IA first. I've actually, weirdly enough, seen some players play water maps where they don't build an Imperial official. Little tip to everyone: don't do that. It's not more efficient. You know, I think I was talking to Cracky about this, and he'd actually brought up Louis because Louis is one of the people who regularly does the no IO build, and Louis even went, yeah, it's not good, and then continued doing it. So like it's a bit of a weird build at the moment. But the problem with doing Imperial Academy first here is it means you don't have a Barbican to shut out one of those bonds. Military wing is going to be on the way, and that's what kind of worries me. Is like CSO, a popular play right now for the Abbasids is to immediately open with a ram and delete these docks. I think that's exactly why Lucy opened with a second dock on the same leg.
Yeah, it's going to be double docks for both of these players, but as you see, CSO is going to be the second player reaching Feudal Age here. He opted to go with the military wing, but on the other side, that Imperial Academy is going to finish a lot sooner here for LucifroN. It's going to be double docks for both. But it looks like CSO is expanding to the other pond as well, something that LucifroN is not yet doing.
Something that's very efficient as well, right? Like, it's crazy to think about this, but LucifroN has spent 300 wood for 2 docks, and CSO has spent 225 wood for free, right? So, like, you know, that's already halfway towards that RAM idea I talked about. Or he could just choose to be greedy and put the extra wood investment into a fishing boat. One tough part, of course, is like at this stage in the game, I do favor Chinese slightly. The reason is that they are obviously able to escalate docks quicker, they're able to tech up quicker. The other detail, though, is like we're not at Golden Age 1. Golden Age 1 at least offsets a lot of the Imperial official advantage, but we're not there yet, right? We're still, I think, 3 or 4 buildings away for CSO.
Oh, yeah. I think the bigger thing is that that's something that scales as you go deeper into the game, whereas at the very beginning here, the big thing is how this fight on the pawns will shape out. Feudal Age would just now kick in here for CSO, but he has already had to garrison all of his fishing boats. And I'm not sure if LucifroN found the dock yet, or well, I should say the dock on the second pond. He might actually have found it, But even if he didn't, I think at some point he's going to have to expect CSO to move out to that second pawn.
Yeah, but you can't really do anything about it now because if CSO just parks his scout there and keeps the military units in the center, he can now just camp that, build a ram to deal with the east side lake, and then come back in later. It looks like LucifroN is trying to sneak a villager out now to that left side lake. There's no way this works, though. Yeah, eyeballs are already on it, so LucifroN is about to lose an eco unit.
That's the cool thing about the military wing over here, because it gives you that early presence. And when you look at hybrid maps, oftentimes what you see is that players commit all of their resources into naval combat. That means that even if you have just 1 or 2 land units, that gives you a lot of map control. So, sure enough, CSO is right now pinned inside his docks and right-hand side pond. But at the same time, he has that second pond and he has safety over there. And let's not forget, if he snipes the enemy fishing boats here, that's just as good for him as cleaning up the fishing boats from CSO is for LucifroN.
Yeah, and good job by LucifroN there. Actually pulled back the villager straight away. I think CSO a little bit neglectful to actually attack the scout like that. You don't need to reveal yourself, right? Like, the villager doesn't have range on you. You just let him bait himself into trying to build that dock. A little bit of chaos happening on the east side lake here, though. Fishing is still underway for LucifroN, but you have to remember it's a lot freer and a lot more floatable for CSO. And this is where we should now be seeing, a ram coming soon? Because this is the stage where you're not contested on what...
Oh my lord! Now talk about a non-sneaky dock over here. Don't forget, CSO's units are slow moving, and it looks like he's going to just allow that dock to go up. He definitely should have seen it, in theory. Oh, Devil coming in.
Dude, like,
should be
you
sniped.
wouldn't look at that. You wouldn't look at that at all, right? Like, there's no reason to look down there right now. I can't believe that.
That's exactly what I'm thinking about. It's the type of a thing where it's in your vision, but are you actually seeing it? Because why would you look down here?
Right underneath his nose. Ram is at least going to come up to try and contest this dot, but now CSO has bigger problems, right? Like, this is meant to be free economy, all focused on the right side, but LucifroN, the crafty bugger that he is, and you have to remember, it only takes China a matter of seconds to get those docks up due to how fast their build speed is. He's even adding in a second dock to guarantee he doesn't get shoved off this lake.
I love it. And at the same time, CSO's busy trying to inflict some kind of damage on the opposing player on this eastern, on the eastern pond. And it didn't really work out. He's going to slowly take out these docks at the ramp, but he also invested a lot of resources into ships that just got scuttled immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like that he wasted efforts building boats like this. I think it was just a wasted effort compared to just, getting more defenses up on the west side. Like, one archer ship out here would have done the world of difference. A second ram, maybe, to actually block your opponent's eco quicker, because look at what happens when you got one. Great read, LucifroN. He prepped the archery range ahead of time. He gets triple archer, and all of a sudden you can't contest. So docks aren't going to go down. Ram is going to be lost, and all of a sudden LucifroN's going to have the east side for free. West side is now a giant war zone waiting to happen.
And that's the problem for CSO. Because now his fishing eco is going to be contested on the spawn, but at the same time, LucifroN does have some untouched fishing eco here on the right side that he simply cannot contest.
I'm sorry, I had to laugh at that. Like, when you're that bad off, you're using 2 villagers to try and burn down dock, you know it's gone bad, right? Like, this ram, I think, is meant to be coming back to assist with that. It's going to be too late. I can't believe LucifroN has walked halfway across the map without wheelbarrow to do that.
And now archers are coming out as well for LucifroN. He's got 3 of them on the field. CSO is mixing in a horseman, but things are slowly slipping out of his control. He doesn't have any fishing eco, although LucifroN is housed right now, so his own combat ship cannot pop out of that dock. But I feel like he's now in firm control over this game.
Yeah, 5 eco lead. We haven't got any Song Dynasty, right? So land eco at least isn't scaling. But we should now have the military vessels pumping out. First one comes out, it's just to contest this. Arch ship follow-up just to try and clear up the fishing boats. And this is tough now. I mean, CSO's only play to get back in this game is more rams. It sounds trivial, but like that is the only way he can do this now.
Yeah, it's not looking good for CSO right now. He's getting some horsemen out, but yeah, I'm actually wondering if he's looking for Castle Age here. He's banking up a lot of resources. He's also mining stone, so he might just completely forfeit the pawns and say, okay, I'm going to go Castle, I'm going to play 2TC and see where it goes from there.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like, I understand stone for the arrow slits, right? So that can be a way of you trying to maintain control here. It's just difficult to try to play mass arrow slits when you only have double dock. You kind of need 3 to really feel like it kicks in this position, because otherwise there's always a safe area for LucifroN to retreat to. I think that's exactly what CSO's going to discover quick here. The problem with this whole idea of going like 2TC fast castle at this stage, I feel like you open the door for LucifroN to get castle quicker and just have a superior force.
I'm not saying it's a good way to play this. I just feel like this is the direction that he's heading at this point.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough one, though, because LucifroN did have untouched fishing eco on that right-hand side pond for some time. In fact, if we look at that pond, that is full of fishing boats now. Lucy only opened with 3 fishing boats. Now he's up to 7. He's escalating his water-based eco. Now he's starting to add fishing boats on the left side as well. So, yeah, by the time you catch up in terms of villagers, it's going to be too late. It's already a 14 eco difference between the two. And you see LucifroN himself is banking up resources potentially for Castle Age.
Yeah, and CsOH's adding in a second ram, so he's trying to delete these. I think this is just to reclaim his own lake. Yeah, there you go. So it's coming in on the west side now. So he will eventually reclaim this pond. I just don't see a world in which LucifroN can test this. It's too far out of his area. But the price is going to be high, right? Like, I actually could very easily see LucifroN being Castle Age a whole minute before CsOH.
And CsOH is actually using up all of his wood here. He's actually making a second battering ram. He's making new ships as well. So even though he does have a lot of stone in the bank, definitely more than what he needs for the arrow sleds, he doesn't have the wood for that second town center. He's just not going to have enough resources for Castle Age, but don't forget, Abyssids take their time to go up to Castle, although the demos are beautiful over here, and that's something that might give a lifeline here for CsOH.
Yeah, like I said, he's always going to eventually pull this back to his side, right? Because you can see with the rams, it's always the advantage. LucifroN, like, he can't bring 5 archers near the pond like this because there's boats that can kill him. But, you know, the bigger problem now is about strike, right? Like, you need to be at the eco to tech up when your opponent is about 800 short, at least. It's not working out that way, right? It's actually working out a lot worse. We're probably going to be looking at, I think it has to be Culture Wing. If you go Eco Wing here, you just don't have your techs quick enough to contest.
I agree, 100% agree. CsOH is still trying to clean up this spawn, but again, he's just a little too slow to the party. He's going up with the Culture Wing, second TC just now coming in, but on the opposing side, you do have a Chinese player with a lot of food income, and that's exactly what's going to happen when a Chinese player has a lot of food. They're going to get to Castle Age, and they're going to flood you with Palace Guards, not something that CsOH will have an immediate answer to.
I always find Palace Guard a bit of a scam, you know? You can't have a name like that and actually leave the palace, right? Like, you're not much of a guard, are you? Like, yeah, we're guarding people because we're killing everyone else around the world. Like, wait, what? But
yeah, you're basically guarding the rubble of the opponent's DC.
There you go. Yeah, we're guarding the future palace location. The interesting thing is that TC placement, though, is very far forward for CsOH. Like, in a game where he's about to get flooded by Palace Guard, he has to be anticipating that, right? Like, he doesn't try to play it condensed at all. I don't think that's even connected for Fire Armor. So, like, if 20 Palace Guard come in, it's just going to evaporate.
He actually cancelled his initial TC and replaced it more to the front. But yeah, I agree with you. That's very, very exposed. I feel like this game reminds me a lot of the Dry Arabia game that we've seen, in a sense that CsOH feels like he's taking giga gambles. He knows he's on the back foot, and he's not saying, okay, I'm going to play this safe or I'm going to do quote-unquote reasonable things. He's just gonna YOLO that second TC spot and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take risks. Like, I respect that. I hate it when players are like, oh, well, the next calculated choice is like, no, you're already behind. Yep. Right? Get off the beaten path. We played this out a million times. He's at least being wacky. But you know, it's hard to see a clean way to the light here. Like, reaching Castle Age like this, if you at least had good food eco, great. But your only food source is on the front line here, right? And that front line is going to move uncomfortably deep into your base.
Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen, and this is why this DC spot is going to backfire. But again, let's be honest, his alternative is playing it safe, in which case he likely ends up losing the game. At least he's going to try something with a high upside, but it's just so unlikely to work out, especially because he's responding to this Palace Guard raid with Gulam.
Please stop. Like, this is about to be the most Benny Hills thing we're going to see this game. I mean, all you have to do is run, right? Like, this is the thing that I think a lot of people hate about Palace Guard. You always get the counter argument, yeah, but they're not very tanky. It's like, yeah, but they just run away, so I never get to prove that they're squishy.
Exactly, and you can mass produce them so quickly by supervising the barracks. LucifroN is up to 13 of them already. Compare that to CsOH's production. It's almost non-existent.
Yeah, but they're not tanky. Look, villagers can fight them. Please, turn around and A-click now. I dare you. Oh, God.
The thing with Palace Guard is that, sure enough, villagers can fight them, Gulam can fight them, but you repel the first wave, you lose 15 vills, and there's a second wave, and a third wave, and a 27th wave.
Yeah, I think so. I'm, like, whenever someone says you can do so, I'm always reminded of a friend of mine, Pycat, once in a cast. He said it'd be like eating crap, and I asked, how do you know that the eating sorry, it's bad. I was like, how do you know it's bad? It's like, well, you know that eating crap is bad. You don't have to eat it though to know that. This is the same situation. Like, you could fight with your villagers right now. You probably have to fight with your villagers right now. Nothing about it is going to feel good in this game, Lidicore. Like, I've got a feeling that CSO... I don't know if we're just going to see one of those demoralization slopes. Like, game one, I'm surprised that didn't shock and awe him to his brain. But this right now feels like him just going through the motions in a game that's already over.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually wondering about his mindset over here, because staying in a game like this can have different effects on different players. Some just say, okay, I'm going to use this as some extra time to think about my strategy for the upcoming game. Or maybe I'm just hoping for a miraculous recovery arc. But at the same time, for some players, it might just increase that level of frustration that they have. It's like, yeah, I'm still trying, but it's not working out. And oftentimes, subconsciously, that leads to frustration that could bleed into the subsequent game.
Yeah, and like the kind of brutal thing here, right, is like CSO is probably getting this false confidence because he was being sick with the micro there, right? Like, I think actually the Chinese duo have been the most impressive with their TC garrisoning. Like, I've seen it from Louis as well, where he'll clutch up in moments by shift garrisoning to the other side, now that you can do that. But I just think, like, it's that kind of feeling when you make a sick move in a fighter game that looks really cool to watch, but then you look at the health bars and you see your opponent is still at 100 HP, and you're at 0, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit baiting.
I feel like he's staying in this game partially because he still has the pawn to the left, and I don't think he knows how big the eco difference is between the two.
Yeah.
In his mind, he might be thinking that he's down by, now after all these raids, maybe 20 villagers, let's say. He doesn't know it's actually 33. He actually repelled this first assault, but again, this is what we talked about, KP. You repel the first wave, there is going to be a second one, and there is always going to be a third one as well. A lot of villagers idled, and LucifroN is walling off the sacred sites. Worst case scenario for LucifroN right now is that he wins with the sacred sites.
Yeah, I mean, the relics go in the way as well. Like, there's no way CSO's sneaking out of his base, right? Even if he gathers that food, it's going to run out sooner rather than later. I think he's had enough. GG gets called. So LucifroN already now on match point. CSO, nothing but perfection if he wants to win.
Yeah, he has his moments, but I feel like the difference in tournament experience really shows in some of these games. Especially when he starts falling behind, I feel like his responses are sometimes suboptimal. And a player like LucifroN, who is definitely part of the elite players of AOE IV, he's going to exploit every single little mistake that you make. The moment CSO is on the back foot, LucifroN is just going to go pedal to the metal and finish him off.
Yeah, I think it's like more an issue if CSO really thrives on that early mid game, right? And the moment it splits out there, if he doesn't have the advantage he's looking for, like, he doesn't seem to find a way to recover. He's taking these gambles, great, but the problem is at that stage in the game when he's taking the gambles, they become predictable. We saw that in game 1, we just saw it again in game 3, right? Like, by the time he's making the move that we say is risky, it's literally because every single other move doesn't exist on the board anymore. So I'm hoping that, you know, whatever he chooses in game 4 has arcing elements to it in the first 8 minutes. Otherwise, I think we're in for a free one.
Yeah, the remaining maps will be Hillandale and Holy Island. So I feel like Holy Island is more of a map where you could cause early chaos, but we're heading into Hillandale. It's going to be English versus Mongols. Definitely some opportunities for some early engagements, but you just feel like this is, besides Dry Arabia, the most classic map that you can go for, and that should play into the hands of LucifroN.
But, like, what was the thought process behind Mongols over Byzantines is what I'm wondering here. Because, like, Mongols used to be popular for this Russian before the walls could go up, right? But, like, English don't care about that. So I'm starting to wonder, like, did LucifroN think that it was going to be English for Holy Island? Which, by the way, is a totally sane thought, right? Like, if you're in a draft, a competitive draft against a top 16 player in AOE IV Lidicore, and you know that Holy Island is map number 5, and their choices are English, Ayabids, or Malians, how high or drunk do you think they are to not save English for Holy Island? Right?
Interesting, interesting question, Gabe. But let's just wait with that once we get to game number 5. If we get to game number 5, I should say. LucifroN right now with the 2-1 lead in this best of 5. And we only have 30 seconds left to go here, KP, until game number 3. Of course, this is only the first set of 4 today. We're looking at the opening rounds of Group C and D here in Masters of Realms. And we have some banger sets as well, KP. Just a quick preview, though. One thing I've looked at when it comes to the stats is that LucifroN versus CsO is not the only matchup that's extremely rare. Most of the matchups that we're having today have rarely ever happened before.
Well, it sounds like a day of action that everyone needs to be locked into. It also sounds like a day of action that people need to make sure they're not missing a single piece of. And the only way to do that is if you're subscribed to the channel so the ads don't get in the way. There's nothing else I can do to help you. Sorry, we got to get on with the game. Game number 4 on your screens. And I need LucifroN to lose this right now because I really need to know what the hell CsO's plan is on Holy Island with either the Malians or the Iabids. I'm not going to lie. I just don't care about this game. Just give English the win, Lidicor. I need that game 5. My brain can't figure out what the plan is.
Well, you're not the only one that needs game 5. CsO does too, because he's down by 1 in this opening round. And this is a GSL group stage, KP, which means that the final scoreline rarely matters for these players. What matters is who wins the set. So for CsO, losing 3-2 or 3-1, it makes no difference. He wants to have that win over here in what is a very stacked group here in Group D. Of course, alongside LucifroN and CsO, we do have Wham and Baltoon as well, 2 players that will face off against each other later today.
Oh, so many intense, enjoyable games. You don't want to miss a single beat of it, folks. And remember, like, we're not even done with the group stage at the end of this weekend. We've still got the winner matches as well as loser matches, decider matches. So be sure to tune in on them. A few more weekends of AOE IV action here in the Master Realms before it all concludes. But yeah, let's think about how this game's going to conclude, because this is an interesting one. Mongols definitely a Civ that looks incredibly underwhelming. One of the weakest performing Civs actually in AOE IV right now. But in competitive play, still finding ways of wiggling in. This matchup, I'm not so sure about, though, because ever since the discovery of the 2TC Fast Castle English build, it seems the challenge is to find a way of stopping them. I'm not sure how Mongols stop them, Lidicor.
I feel like the weird thing about Mongols, and this is something that's always difficult to wrap my head around, the weird thing with Mongols on this map is that this map begs for walls. It's actually a map in the closed map category. But Mongols cannot make walls, so one of the strongest elements, or one of the most iconic elements of Hillendia gameplay is completely removed from the arsenal of the Mongols. At the same time, we've seen players operating with silver trees, especially in team games on Hill and Dale, so I'm actually wondering if LucifroN is thinking about it. Don't forget, if English play the classic Council Hall opening, their army is traditionally very slow-moving, so they might struggle to clean up trades. We've seen actually signs of that on a map like Canal back before. You kind of try to counter English by playing Mongols and just playing into the trade, but CsO has something else on his mind. It's the Abbey of Kings, and that is definitely a better response to the Silver Tree than the Council Hall would be.
Yeah, the interesting thing, though, is, like, you hit it on the head already. You can't wall this map, and the brutal thing about the new English build isn't even the King. It's not even the 2TC. It's the White Tower. The White Tower is basically like a Euroshiro Stables. So you're about to win a map against Knights, and you have no way of walling yourself in. I think that's what has me most worried for LucifroN. So I need to see, I think, a feudal-focused game plan here, because I think if this reaches Castle, he could be in trouble.
Yeah, the big problem, again, as you highlighted, is that trade is nice, but if you cannot wall, you are going to be in big, big trouble. So I'm actually curious how LucifroN is going to play this. Don't forget, oftentimes we see a silver tree, but it's almost a bait. It makes your opponent focus on trade when you barely have any traders going. So I'm actually wondering if it's going to be used as a semi-bait and only add traders if CsO is not really contesting map control. So definitely a somewhat unusual opening here between these two players. And, you know, when you look at these two landmarks, it's always funny to think back to the times where it was always Deer Stones and always Council Hall. You look at a game now, it's Silver Tree and Abbey of Kings.
Yeah, it's beautiful how the meta changes. I mean, there's some civs that I wish function like this, right? Like, there's still certain civs out there where it's always the same thing, right? Like, Chamber of Commerce, maybe one of these days would be nice. You know, I'm just saying. Like, it's not just like acronyms, but hopefully we do see some more innovations. I mean, the thing is, I know English are a little bit overtuned right now, but I hope they don't revert the changes here. I think the issue with the English build right now is just the White Tower itself. And it's always been that case, right? Like, so many times in AOE IV, we can point to one of the big critical issues being how good defensive landmarks are, right? And I think White Tower definitely fits that category. because it's able to ramp knights so quickly. Now, the interesting thing on this map about that opening king, though, is you mentioned the trade. You can't trade freely. You have to scale Keshik. So LucifroN needs a long feudal, because if you try to go fast castle as well, I mean, there's nothing there for you straight away. But also, the king will just kill your traders.
Yeah, that king acts as a proxy knight in many ways, and it's good enough to kill the traders if you have nothing protecting them. CsO is on stone, so there is going to be a second town center coming in. I'm actually wondering where he's going to place it. Usually you place your second TC on food, but that's less significant with a civilization like English that will transition to farms early on. And at the same time, you do push in the deer, so it's just going to be a very nice and condensed base protecting the golden stone.
So, with the TC mine, deer location, there's another thing that just makes it really good for the fast castle build is like you don't even necessarily have to add in farms that quickly. But given the TC placement, like White Tower could easily just be dropped around where the deer is. You build farms around that. Usually, you want to lean it more towards the tree line, is what I'd say. That way, you can't be raided there. But I like that LucifroN's already pushing momentum here. This is really smart. I've seen a few players try to play this out, and the biggest issue is they don't just immediately pump. They go trade first. And it backfires hard, because if you don't have 4+ Keshiks, the king just shrugs it off.
TC is going to be complete, so it is now villager production time for CsO. LucifroN did move the silver tree to a corner, and it looks like he is early adding the traders. Now, because his base is so condensed, it is for CsO, of course. Because his base is so condensed, I think he can send that king out to hunt for traders. I'm not sure if he actually scouted the silver tree, though, because I think that's a big variable going into this game.
He should be anticipating it, though, right? It's the most logical play on a map like this. But interesting detail about that king. There is something that can make it very difficult to trade hunt with the king in this matchup. And it's something I noticed very recently. Like, I had pros in chat at the time that were even confused as to what the hell was happening. I don't know if you knew this, but the Khan's movement speed fluctuates. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. It goes
Is
up
the
and
bug
down.
or is it a feature, though?
I guess it's a feature. Like, maybe some sort of reverse gravity thing that when he shoots his arrows, they propel him forward. I guess he's a Hanzo main, but, like, I've noticed that when I was watching a game where a king should have gotten out of range of the Khan, his movement speed kept fluctuating between 1.62 and 1.69. So, like...
Nice.
Yeah, perfect, right? Which is the movement speed of the king. So it's almost impossible if the king is in range to get away from the Khan, even if he doesn't have maneuver speed of arrow.
Tower's already coming up here for the trade, and I guess we've gotten our response, KP. LucifroN isn't just adding 1 or 2 traders over here like players do in many cases. This is a full-on trade build. He's committing multiple villagers to build towers, and this should be the indicator for CsO to know that LucifroN isn't just going to add a small amount of traders, he's going to commit very heavily to this.
That's a big ouchie, though. Like, failing to get the first outpost like that, that's going to lead probably to a trader kill, because you can just hang around, the Keshik's not immediately going to kill you. And, you know, like, 2 Keshiks doesn't dent the king quick enough, so, like, realistically, CsO could chip this down. I think he's just happy at keeping the threat alive, though, right? And while he's keeping his opponent on the defensive, he's going for a tech up. Like, for a guy who's going all in on trade, this is going to feel underwhelming with how quick CsO's timing is here.
Yeah, normally a trade build is able to beat a 2 TC build because the return of investment is much quicker. But let's not forget that because you do have that very quick production using the White Tower for your knights, CsO can punish this trade very, very quickly. And we're actually haven't reached a point where this trade build or where the trade-based eco of LucifroN is better than CsO's eco. And by the time you reach that point, CsO should have knights out harassing those traders.
Yeah, and notice this White Tower placement, by the way. This is all because of the wood line. He wants to be able to protect that as well as the farm transition that will come in behind this. But you know, this scares me. I mean, LucifroN, he has a pitiful army. Normally in this type of game, you'd be prepping spears already, because the reality is, like, a good English player will just pump knights now. And Keshiks can't beat that. Like, you can't scale them quick enough, actually. It's kind of insane just how good the White Tower production is. So LucifroN, with that in mind, you know, what is his options here? He can't fast castle. He's going to have to hang around in feudal for a good few minutes. He's going to have to spear up and hope that CsO doesn't transition to a meat shield of men-at-arms too quick.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the best response against night raids like that would be walls, but guess what? That's exactly what the Mongols do not have. And there's a side note here, KP. The gold mine for LucifroN is very much at the front. Now, most of his gold right now is coming from trade, but if he starts losing traders, his backup option for gold income is also very exposed.
Yeah, and can we do like a sheep count? I mean, he's on the deer right now, but like long term that matters, especially when you're pumping Keshiks like this, right? So like, okay, he's got 8 sheep. He's got like what, about 2/3 of his deer left. It's still kind of precarious here. I mean, you know, what's even wilder is if CSO reads this correctly, he can just scale knights and go for the relics next. Like, I don't think there's any big rush to dive the enemy base here.
Yeah, I love his walls though. Although it would have been nicer if those were made actually to the edge of the cliff, but I think he understands that right now, LucifroN has the numbers advantage, and LucifroN needs to distract him. That's exactly what LucifroN is doing. He's actually harassing these hunters with the Keshik, with a slow reaction from CSO. Very slow reaction from
Not
CSO.
again. No, game 1
Oh, no.
flashbacks. It's the Ghazi. He wears armor this time.
Oh no! And there is no excuse for this for CSO. He shouldn't be distracted with anything else. Oh,
Like,
that's a disaster. That is a complete disaster.
Can we just delete the Khan now? This is your new king. Like, I can't believe that, dude. Like, the value he just got there. And the balls on this guy. LucifroN goes Kurotai. I love this. Like, he doesn't have much of an army, but eventually he will, right? And you need this. Like, every time I watch a Mongol game where someone goes for step readout instead of Kurotai against English, I write it off straight away. Like, you're fighting into an aura without your own aura buff. You just don't stand a chance there. So, definitely the correct call there. Even though it feels bad when you have single-digit military count doing it.
And I was just praising CSO for walling off the right side to make sure that LucifroN can't just commit his Keshik to raid and distract CSO from those counterattacks with the knights, only to see that CSO gets his villagers on the food butchered, and as a consequence, he's got no knights in production. He's got the White Tower, which is a great landmark to mass-produce knights with, but he doesn't have the food to mass-produce them. We're looking at 1 knight facing off against soon-to-be 13 Keshik, and LucifroN is now in Castle Age, so those Keshiks are a lot more formidable than they used to be.
Yeah, I think, look, this is kind of a messy thing about Hill and Dale as well, right? Like, Hill and Dale is not a map that people have been practicing this English build on because, well, we haven't been playing Hill and Dale in pubs, right? It's very different because on a standard map, like Dry Arabia, you build 2 farm clusters and tech up, right? On this map, you don't have to do that. You actually kind of get Castle Age a bit too quickly, and I think that can sometimes hurt you. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is like CSO has got the farms coming in now. Down the line, he'll be looking great, but I'm worried about how he looks down the line, right? Like, the king is at least still actively raiding. You have to remember he does get buffed up when you age up. But with this many Keshiks, with the Yammer as well, it should be very easy now to pinch that king.
Yeah, and the problem is that, we talked about this, eventually that trade build gets a lot better than the 2TC build from the English player. And I think we're reaching that domain. And CSO still just has 1 knight and 1 king to harass this with. Crossbows are not being mixed in by LucifroN.
Like, I'd love to see him just maneuver speed arrow now and pinch that king. Like, that would be a sick play here. Instead, he's just going to run him back. So Outpost coming in. Kurotai has been dropped in the enemy base, Lytical. He feels so bad for CSO, he's donating a new landmark.
And he's got enough Keshik to chase down that knight and the king, as well as harass these villagers over here. Another villager does get picked off. CSO's villager count is still alright, but he's being idled out very heavily as well. I guess the only thing that really goes for him right now is that he does have a reasonable farming transition already completed, whereas LucifroN should be running low on deer and sheep soon, so that might give a little breathing room for CSO. But I feel like we're getting back to exactly where game number 1 was. Losing a bunch of villagers to a single unit, and now he's on the back foot, and being on the back foot is never a good thing for CSO in this series.
So like, I think that another issue is like CSO's going into crossbows, but he needs spinman as well. Crossbows is too slow. This Kurotai,
he needs tactical nukes at this point, KP.
Hey, you're not, yep, no weird architecture here. Like, you know, I've heard, Lytical, that London is the most culturally diverse capital in the world. And this is clearly proof of it. Don't you just love that, like, that architecture design? You've got English 18th century, English 16th century, Mongol 16th century.
I mean, at the pace we're playing this, KP, we're soon going to have a Brexit because the English player is going to leave this game at this pace.
I mean, should maybe consider Asia by the looks of it. Mongols are quite inviting. They even want to be part of your kingdom. Oh, this is getting ugly though, my friend. I think with the crossbows here now, like, you're already seeing CSO's outmassed there. He kind of just looks lost. Like, he's floating on average 1,500 resources at any given time.
I'm really wondering what CSO is waiting for with these resources. Because he does have a building that can mass-produce units. There's the White Tower, is barely producing anything. He's slowly adding crossbows, but you see his unit queue at the very top. He barely has units in queue, and That's alarming. You're in a difficult position, so unless he's banking up resources for Imperial, which would be pretty much suicidal, I don't understand why he's not mass-producing anything at this point.
I mean, it's like, what? Where are you even going to put the Berkshire? Can you just check his base? Because I think, what, maybe you delete lumber camps and you build it in the face of the Mongol player with a Kurultai in your base. No, I'm not going to finish that fort. There's not really anything to do here with an upgrade.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing, right? Like, getting to Imperial doesn't help. And at this point, like, just make any kind of a unit. Anything is better than floating 2,000 resources and just waiting for something to happen, especially because now LucifroN is breaking in and he's getting bounty for burning down all these farms.
Please bring the Kurultai around here. Like, you know, LucifroN, don't be a noob about it. You know what you want to do. Wheel that Kurultai all the way around. Just park it on the farmlands, big boy. Oh,
I feel like
no.
he's playing with his food right now.
I mean, this is one of those games where you're just like, why don't you just GG? Like, bro, we've got a busy day. Can we just move on? It's brutal right now, though. CsO, I mean, he genuinely looks stumped.
And this is the big difference between the two. Again, I don't want to overstate the significance of that one Keshik killing a bunch of villagers before, but when you look at the overall villager kill-death ratio, it's 8 for LucifroN, mostly coming out of that Keshik. And on the other side, the moment this raid came in for CsO, LucifroN responded immediately, barely lost any villagers. At least CsO managed to move out to the very south, and he stonewalled that part of the map off. Yeah. But he's still in a very difficult spot, and LucifroN is doing a great job escalating this. It might seem like, okay, he kind of stalled out, he cannot really push into the enemy base right now, but he's collecting the relics, he's about to secure the sacred sites, he still is escalating his trade, and that's the alarming detail for CsO. Holding his base is not going to be enough.
No, and honestly, like, LucifroN, if he just switches trade now, switches siege rather, this is over. Right, like, he could actually start sieging down from where he was with Trebs. Look at this, though. CsO is actually going into Horseman. I mean, I guess that's one way to spend the overburst of food, but I'm not really sure how that's meant to help you against Keshiks. Like, my worry here, yeah, there we go. Like, Spearman, meta arms. Like, LucifroN can just kind of meat shield this now, and we have indeed got Siege Engineer in the way. I believe that is just the normal form, though, so Ram shenanigans. Okay, thank God. I didn't want to have to defend going Rams over Trebs here against the defenses, so this should be just a gradual siege down of the 4 TC in the White Tower.
CsO is trying to mix in some horsemen over here. Remember, he's pretty much out of gold inside his base. That's not something that we haven't have talked about just yet. He only had a single small gold mine to work with. Indeed, he is completely out of gold within his base. He doesn't have any relics or sacred sites, so part of the reason why he's mixing in horsemen over here is because he's totally out of gold.
CsO now just trying to raid. So much harder in this age. Like we mentioned, no walls, but the Sprint placements, the Yamura, it just makes it much more difficult to chip targets. And interesting enough, I think we should have some Keshiks on the way soon to deal with that. Like, it's not that big of a force, right? Like, you know you're having a bad day when you have to lay in horsemen to raid trade at this stage.
Exactly, and picking off a couple of traders, it's too late for that now. If this happened 10 minutes ago, you would say, oh yeah, this is good damage, but now it's just a handful of traders getting picked off, and at the same time, you do have a sizable force in front of your base from LucifroN.
There's a bigger issue, by the way. Like, CsO, please don't go Imperial Age. You have no gold. He's full on dry, 6 short of going imp, and look at where all the gold is. Like, this game is basically over. CsO can't get out of his base. He can build
He's
spears.
not making units, KP.
Yeah,
he is not
because he
queuing
can't
any
afford
units.
Them. Like, look, he just sold food for gold. He's genuinely going to go
He's going Imperial. He must be going into... Oh, he's Berkshiring the big gold on the far left.
Yeah, he has to because he has none. Like, he
exactly.
legit can't get anything. He cannot even get his hands on enclosures at that point, right?
This is actually a crazy play again. But we talked about this, KP. I think he knows that he's in a very tough spot. He's just going to roll a dice here. He needs to roll 666s at this point. But it's not a terrible idea. I mean, this is probably the best thing he can do in the terrible position he's in right now.
Yeah, and LucifroN won't expect this, right? Like, look at the vision. He's right on the edge of just showing it. It's unfortunate as well, because like LucifroN had played everything right. The CsO getting the sneak out gives some signs of life. The Kurultai is still a big problem. The siege is a big problem. Like, you may have this Berkshire, and you may be about to get gold at the core, but my worry is you may be about to lose food.
Food is all the way at the back, so that only happens... Oh no, that's a big problem though.
Oops.
That monk being picked off? Exactly. This is just such a terrible giveaway for CsO. He's
on fire.
Exactly. He didn't want to show that landmark over there, but of course the large range of the Berkshire just fires at those units, and now LucifroN knows exactly what's up.
It's like, when you're facing off, you've just got the military forces on the borders. They're staring each other down. Guns are pointing at each other. And then one guy sneezes and shoots someone. That's what just happened there. You're like, no, don't start the war. We're not ready yet.
Exactly. At the very least, CsOH's base is very well fortified over here. He's got 2 DCs, a White Tower, and a normal keep. And he can mass-produce Springbolts to take out those siege weapons on the other side. LucifroN doing a good job sniping these Springbolts on the opposing side.
Oh, big hit there, though. The mangoes pretty much wipe out the crossbows. I mean, there's actually a lot of damage already on the White Tower here, right? So LucifroN should just reset with the siege, take out the buildings. In the meantime, those farms that we thought were going to be safe, turns out if you just bring enough bodies, you can run through anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what LucifroN needs to do. He just needs to run in here because once you get past this initial defensive line, there's nothing back at home for CsOH.
Oh boy, and he's going to find his way down to that corner. It's not just the farmers, it's also the lumberjacks down here. I don't think he's even prepped a gate ahead in time. He's going to try to run for the high hills now. But the Trebs, I mean, two of them, remember, this is the interesting thing. Kurultai doesn't just buff base damage, it buffs bonus damage. It's basically what geometry should be, which is why that White Tower is dying so quickly to just a handful of Trebs.
Oh my lord, and White Tower is barely holding on. And the big problem here for CsOH is that, it's one thing if you hold on to this, you still have to kind of turn this around, which seems impossible right now. He's got no army to clean up those crossbows with. He's sending out a couple of horsemen trying to desperately snap those mangonels, but LucifroN is creeping up with towers as well. That gives him the Yam aura, and it also gives him a lot of extra firepower once he gets Springbolt emplacements on them.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem with CsOH is he's dead.
True.
Brutal end to the series. CsOH able to get 1 point off of LucifroN, but not able to secure the series. And LucifroN just able to show domination of the Mongols like this. An unexpected outcome in the end, but really cannot fault him at all. Already looked like it was going to be a shaky affair if we got to Game 5. I am not going to lie. I was a little bit biased and I wanted to see Game 5 just to know what the hell CsOH's thought process was on Holy Island. But LucifroN stops him in his tracks here with a 3-1 scoreline.
Yeah, experience in the competitive scene really helped LucifroN over here because CsOH came in with a good game plan. He had some good moves as well, but I feel like at the very end, he just fell short in basically all of these games except for the Chaos map. But I think part of the reason why that happened is because in every single one of the games he lost, he had like one slip up that ultimately started to snowball the game out of control. Just looking at this game and game number 1, he lost 6-7 villagers to a single unit. Those kinds of things, they happen every once in a while, but those kinds of things definitely set you back. And against a player like LucifroN, that deficit that you suffer from that is just too difficult to overcome.